She knocked on a stranger's door with bruises on her face and a baby in her arms. He had lived alone for years, keeping everyone at a distance. That night, everything changed. Welcome to Weathered Stories. Today, I'll tell you about a man who shut himself off from the world and lived like a recluse after losing his wife. About a woman who ran with her baby from a man capable of terrible things. You'll hear what they had to go through to protect that child and each other. This is a story about people who had to make a hard choice. Ready to find out how far someone can go to save a child when they've already lost everything? Then hit like, and let's begin. The knock came hard. Not polite. Not careful. More like a warning. John Kerner looked up from the fire, not in a hurry to move. He knew better than to expect visitors after dark, especially way out here, in his cabin at the edge of the woods. Rain pounded the roof. Wind howled down from the ridge like it was dragging trouble with it. The second knock was different, slower, like someone leaning or slipping. John stood up, limping slightly, and grabbed the old shotgun by the wall. That leg still gave him hell, same injury that cost him his footing 3 winters ago. And his wife. He cracked the door open. She was standing there, soaked to the bone, face bruised, blood at her temple. In her arms, a baby swaddled in a gray blanket. No one said a word. Only when lightning flashed behind her did he see her eyes. Not scared, just worn down. She spoke quietly. "He's not yours, but he needs you." John looked at the baby. It didn't cry, just stared back. Too calm, too aware. "No," John said. He closed the door. Leaning against it, jaw clenched, heart pounding, not from fear. From something else. He stood there, counted to 10, then 20. Rain still hammered the roof. The fire popped behind him. Then he moved and opened the door again. The door creaked. John stepped onto the porch, eyes scanning the dark. The wind hit him like a slap of ice. No one was there. No footprints. No sound but the rain and the slosh of mud under his boots. Then he looked down. There it was, the same gray bundle, soaked through. The baby, still silent. John knelt beside it. The child was warm, even through the wet fabric. Still no crying. Just that stare. Beside him, crumpled paper, ink smeared by the rain. But the words were still there. "Don't let him grow up like his father." John didn't know who she meant, but he understood. He just stood there, staring at the words like they were some kind of verdict. Then he picked the baby up. Light in weight, heavy in meaning. It didn't resist, just rested in his arms. He stepped back inside. The fire had faded, but the cabin held a little heat. John shut the door behind him, and though nothing had really changed yet, he knew something had started. Inside, John laid the baby down near the fire, tucking an old flannel shirt underneath the soaked blanket. The fabric caught the warmth fast. That heavy, empty feeling, hunger, cold, the long road, seemed like it had been living in the child since birth. He lit the kerosene lamp. The glow was soft, dim, but warm. "I don't have any milk," he muttered, staring at the tiny face. "And I got no idea what I'm doing here." In the pantry, some cornmeal, old beans, a brick-hard loaf of bread. Nothing meant for a newborn. Still, he boiled some mush, thinned it with water, strained it through a cloth, and tried feeding the baby with the edge of a spoon. The baby moved a little, opened its eyes, didn't resist. John sat back in his chair by the fire. He pulled the baby into his arms, wrapped tight in a wool blanket, and held him close. Warm, like a stove brick. Small, shockingly alive. "You know," John said quietly, "you probably weren't meant to end up here. But here you are." He fell silent. For a minute, or an hour. He didn't know. Memories rose slow, like water filling a dry basement. 3 years back. Snowy Ridge. His wife's scream. The crack of ice. Then, nothing. He tried to save her. He couldn't. After that, he shut everything out. People. Himself. All that remained was work, silence, and walls. And now this baby. Not his. But those eyes, like they'd seen more than they should. John watched him for a long time. The baby didn't cry, just existed. Later that night, the boy did cry, soft, almost like an apology. John rocked him, gently, aimlessly, humming some broken tune. Something his father used to make up when the horses got nervous in storms. and the baby calmed. John stayed in that chair, back aching, arm numb. But he didn't move, because for the first time in a long while, someone else was breathing next to him. Morning came quiet. No thunder, no wind, no drumming of rain on the roof. Just a faint gray light creeping through the fogged-up window, drawing a soft line across the wooden floor. John opened his eyes to a feeling he barely recognized. Sleep. Real, deep sleep. Not the jumpy kind that ends with a twitch, not the kind that comes from sheer exhaustion. But rest. On his chest, still curled up, was the baby. Warm. Breathing slow. One little hand rested on his shirt collar, fingers twitching lightly in sleep. John stayed still. Just looked. At the baby. At the ceiling. At nothing in particular. He didn't feel different. But something had shifted. He didn't know how long he lay there. Just listened to the baby's breath. Then he slowly sat up, keeping the boy steady in his arms. His spine cracked. His neck throbbed. "You're still here," he whispered. So it wasn't a dream. He glanced at the cold ashes in the fireplace. At the crumpled notes still lying on the floor. At the tiny hand clutching his shirt like it didn't want to let go. He didn't smile. But something inside him settled, just a little. He still didn't know what came next. But now he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't alone. By morning, the rain had finally given up. The light crept in, steady and quiet, and John rose from the chair with a stiff back and sore hands. The house was calmer than usual, quieter in a way he couldn't explain. He looked down at the baby, still sleeping in a nest of old flannel near the fireplace. He made his way through the house, checked the grain sack, empty. Dug through a drawer, just old salt and a bit of coffee. Nothing for the boy. Nothing warm to wrap him in but a soaked blanket. John knew this wouldn't last. They needed more. He poured water into a kettle, warmed it, and tried to steep what was left of the beans into a weak broth. Strained it, cooled it, fed the baby with the back of a teaspoon. The boy took it slow, without fuss. But John knew it wasn't enough. He wrapped him in an old feed sack, rigged a simple sling across his shoulder, and pressed the child to his chest. Saddling the mule, he said only one word under his breath. "Hold on." The road into town was thick with mud. Post-storm ground sucked at his boots like it wanted him to stay. They made it to town just before noon. People noticed right away. A man with a baby strapped to his chest, face drawn, coat carrying the scent of someone else's storm. Some folks paused. Some just watched. The silence wasn't hostile, but it was cautious. Like everyone knew this wasn't a story they wanted to hear too much about. Outside the store, Martha stood on the steps, watching him with sharp, tired eyes. "He's not yours, is he?" she asked, not judging. Just asking. John didn't answer. He just walked inside and grabbed what they needed. Formula, a bottle, some cloth for diapers, food, candles, shells. When he stepped back out, the sheriff was there. Leaning against the porch rail, holding a crumpled sheet of paper, looked like a wanted poster. His face gave nothing away. "Didn't figure you for the fathering type," he said, calm and even. "I'm not," John replied. "Folks are talking," the sheriff went on. "Say some woman ran off from a bad man. Left you the kid. Word is, the boy's father? He's not someone who lets things go." John adjusted the sling, pulling it tighter across his shoulder. "You planning to do anything about it?" "Not yet," the sheriff said. "But if he comes, you'd better be ready." Then he turned and walked away, like nothing had happened. John stood there, baby in his arms, the quiet weight of the town stairs pressing into his back. The days changed. Not better, not worse, just different. John got up with first light, usually before the baby. He'd light the stove, boil water, fix something warm, simple, but filling. He'd started calling the baby Colton in his mind. The boy hardly cried. He just watched. And that, somehow, was more unsettling than any scream. John built a cradle out of an old crate, lined it with cut-up wool scraps, and set it close to the fire. Some days he'd rock Colton slowly in his arms, sitting in that worn-out chair, not because he knew how, but because the silence felt too heavy without it. One evening, digging through drawers, John found a bundle of cloth. Tucked between old handkerchiefs and a wooden spoon, 2 tiny socks. Wool. One gray, one a little lighter. The stitches uneven. Hand-knit, clearly. No pattern. No plan. Just something made from scraps. From love. He remembered. October. His wife sitting on the porch. The sun going down. She was still counting stitches. Just in case, she'd said. The child never came. John sat on the edge of the bed, laid the socks beside him. He stared at them for a long time. Something clamped tight in his chest, not pain. Just depth. He picked one up, glanced at Colton, peaceful, asleep, chest rising and falling slow. You'd fit in these, John whispered. Wouldn't even slip out. He didn't cry. Couldn't. But from that day on, every morning started the same. He'd pull those socks from the drawer and lay them next to the cradle. Like it meant something. Maybe it meant everything. John was stacking wood along the wall when he felt it. Didn't hear anything. Didn't see a thing. He just felt it, like a shift in the air before a storm. He turned. She was sitting on the steps. The same woman who'd knocked on his door that night. Soaked through back then, like the dirt after a flood. Now dry, but broken. Her face looked different. Cheeks sunken, eyes drained, lips cracked. Fresh bruises on her arms. Her gaze, cautious, like she was bracing to be turned away. In her lap lay the baby. Sleeping. Wrapped in the same gray blanket. She didn't look at John. Just brushed her finger gently across the boy's cheek. You picked a good time, John said, not stepping closer. Saw smoke. Figured it was time, she answered. He didn't ask where she'd been. Didn't ask why she left. The answers were all over her. How she walked. How she held the child. You look worse, he said flatly. He found me. In Silverton, she replied. Said he forgave me. Then broke a rib. You should have stayed gone. I couldn't. I had to know if he was okay. If he was warm. If someone was there. She hugged the baby tighter. His name's Colton, she whispered. John nodded slightly. Yeah. I've been saying it in my head. Just never out loud. I was afraid to. He stepped closer. The baby was still asleep, breathing easy. Whole. Alive. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, she said. That's not why I came. I just needed to see him. To be sure. He looked at her. Saw pain. But also strength. You've got a choice, he said. Stay? If you want. She was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. Slowly. Till the storm passes. Then we'll see. She stood and walked into the house. John stayed on the porch, eyes on the sky. The clouds were rolling back in. But now, there were 3 people under that roof. They sat at the table. Water boiled on the stove, and the room smelled like pine smoke and dry mint. Colton dozed in the old crate cradle, tucked in tight with wool. Allison stared at a fixed point on the wall, unmoving. John rinsed his hands in the basin and didn't say a word. He knew what was coming. He's coming, she said, almost a whisper. I know, John answered. She nodded. He doesn't let go. When I ran, he burned down my aunt's barn, just to show me he could still find me. He never comes alone. Always brings people. But he calls the shots. John dried his hands on a cloth, looked out the window. The trees stood still, but the air was charged. I can hold them off, he said, calm and steady. You're alone, she reminded him. I've been alone a long time. That's not new. This isn't about courage. It's about surviving. I get that. He walked to the back cabinet, opened it, pulled out a shotgun. Checked the shells. Then grabbed the short one, the sawed-off. It's gonna get messy, he said. But I'm not letting him take that boy. Allison stepped in close. If he gets to me, fine. I can live with that. But if he gets to Colton, he won't. John cut her off. He looked her straight in the eyes, calm, hard. I promise. They stood in silence. Only the fire cracked in the stove. The storm hadn't broken yet, but it was already coming. The rain came back deep into the night. No thunder, no warning. Just silence, and then everything at once. It hit the roof like footsteps overhead, steady and cold. Allison stood by the stove, wrapping Colton in layers of old blankets. He didn't cry. Just moved his head slightly, like he could sense what was coming. John sat at the table, checking his weapons. Shells sorted. Guns loaded. His hands were steady. You think he's coming himself? Allison asked without turning. He's not the kind to send someone else, John said. If it's revenge, he'll want to look you in the eye. She nodded, her hands still on the baby. Then he's close. John stood, walked to the door, and threw it open. The darkness was thick, but his eyes knew what to look for. Shadows moved between the trees. Slow. Careful. 5, maybe 6. One stood higher up, watching from a ridge. The one calling the shots. They're here, he said when he came back in. Allison pulled the pistol he'd given her earlier from under the counter. "I'm ready." The first shot shattered the window. Glass burst. The lamp on the wall exploded. Flames in the stove lurched. Colton cried, for the first time, really cried. Sharp. Scared. A sound that cut through everything. John darted to the window, fired into the dark toward the well. One man dropped, screaming. Another ducked behind a tree. For around the house. One on the hill, watching, John said. Horley's with them. Waiting. Allison rushed to the hatch in the floor. She tucked Colton inside, patted it with rags, laid a board over it. One hand on the wood. The other gripping her pistol tight. The door shook from a boot hitting it hard. "Let him come," John muttered, crouching low. The first man busted through. John shot instantly. The guy flew backward into the mud, never moved again. The second one stumbled in, slipped on blood, crashed into the stove. Allison fired, missed. The man raised his weapon. John lunged, slammed into him from the side, and fired point blank. The wall turned dark behind him. 2 bodies inside. 3 shadows still out there. The fight was far from over. The rain kept falling, but it didn't feel as heavy now. Like the sky had finally emptied itself. Silence filled the doorway. Bodies lay still on the floor. The air was thick with gunpowder, damp wood, and blood. Allison stood with the pistol lowered, her hands shaking. John leaned on the shotgun, breathing hard. Blood trickled down his cheek, slow and steady. Then he stepped through the door. Dane Horley. Slow stride. Black coat gleaming with rain. Eyes blank beneath the brim of his hat. He didn't rush. He looked like a man who believed everything here already belonged to him. He crossed the threshold without even glancing at the dead. Stopped in the center of the room. "I knew you were here," he said. "I always find what's mine." His voice wasn't angry, just flat, like a man picking up a lost item. "Leave," John said, his voice rough, but steady. "I'm not here for you." Horley turned to Allison. "So you decided to be a mother now? Not just a carrier, but a person. Doesn't suit you." He took a step forward. Allison raised the pistol. "Don't move. Don't try it," he said coldly. "You know what I do to the brave ones." "I do," she answered. "He's mine," Horley added. "By blood." "No," she said. "You made him. But you were never his father." "You don't get it," he said. "He'll be me, whether you want it or not. That's how it works." John straightened up. "You're wrong. We get to choose. And he'll choose." Horley gave a slow, bitter smile. "You think you can change what someone is?" The shot rang out. Allison's bullet caught Horley in the side. He staggered, grabbed the wall, but didn't fall. His face twisted in pain and rage. He turned toward her, raised his gun. "Don't," John whispered. Horley pulled the trigger, but John was faster. His shot hit Horley square in the chest. The man stumbled back, dropped his weapon, collapsed to the floor. Wet. Still. Allison still had her pistol up, hands trembling. John walked over, knelt beside the body. "It's done." Silence again. The rain softened. Somewhere behind the house, a night bird cried out. Then, from beneath the floor, a faint sound. "Colton." Allison ran to the hatch, pulled back the boards. There he was, breathing, watching her. She scooped him up, held him tight. He relaxed in her arms, like he knew no one else was coming. John wiped the sweat from his forehead. His hands were shaking. He sank to the floor. "You all right?" he asked. "No, but we're alive." "That's enough." They both looked at Colton. He didn't understand what had just happened, but he knew. He was safe now. One threat was gone, and maybe something new was beginning. The house was dark and quiet. Only the soft crackle of dying embers in the stove reminded them that life still moved inside these walls. Blood stained the floor. Splinters from the busted door scattered near the entryway. Broken glass, the sharp smell of gunpowder, it all lingered. But none of it felt threatening anymore. Allison sat by the wall, holding Colton close. He was asleep, wrapped tight in a blanket, nestled against her chest. Breathing steady, peaceful. John stood by the window, staring into the night. His shotgun leaned against the wall beside him. He wasn't gripping it anymore. "You need to wrap that head," she said softly. "Morning," he answered, not turning. "Right now, I just need to stand a while." She nodded, even though he couldn't see it. They were both exhausted. Not from the fight. From everything else. From life. From always bracing for the next blow. Allison looked down at Colton. Will he remember? No, John said. But maybe he'll feel it. That someone stood their ground for him. There's a kind of silence that only comes after a storm. Not just quiet, but a space that begs to be filled with something new. That night, no one knocked on the door. No one shouted. No one came to take anything. Just 3 people. Worn out, but alive. And that was a start. Morning slipped in quietly. No thunder. No tapping rain on the roof. Just a slow shift in light. Outside the window, the world held still. The wet ground soaked up the last of the storm. A low fog crept along the fence line. The air smelled of damp wood and something cleaner, like the land had finally exhaled. Allison poured boiling water into a tin mug. Colton slept curled up in the cradle nearby. John sat at the table, his head wound covered with clean cloth. He moved slow, but sure. Have you killed before? She asked, without looking up. He was quiet for a long time. In war? Yeah. In fights sometimes. But never like that. Never for something that was mine. She sat across from him. I don't feel proud. Just hollow. You're alive, he said. He's not. That counts for something. They drank in silence. Every movement felt new. Every word had weight. What now? She asked. He shrugged. Fix the door. Check the roof. Figure out where to find food. She nodded. Sounds like a plan. He looked at her. Really looked. You can stay. Till you figure out where you're headed. She smiled, barely. Maybe I already have. That morning, there were no big talks. No promises. No plans for the future. Just quiet. And, for the first time in a long while, no dread. The day was quiet. Gray. But the rain had finally passed. The ground was still damp, water glinting in the ditches. John sat on the porch, fixing a loose board in the railing. Colton slept inside. Allison was near the stove, hanging damp cloths to dry. When he heard the hoofbeats, John didn't flinch. He knew someone would come. And he knew exactly who. Sheriff Tom Elders pulled up at the edge of the yard. His horse puffed hard from the long ride. The sheriff looked worn down, like sleep hadn't touched him in days. Hat low. Hands open. No weapon drawn. Heard y'all had a long night, he said quietly. John didn't stand. Just gave a small nod. You come alone? Yeah. Not here to judge. Just need to know what happened. John nodded toward the house. There's a woman inside. She's the boy's mother. And the boy, well, he's fine now. And Horley. He didn't leave. Who fired first? He did. But it doesn't matter. Not here. He came for something that didn't belong to him. The sheriff stood there for a moment, silent, then gave a single, knowing nod. No one's going to cry over him. Half the town feared his name. The other half just kept quiet. John studied him, searching his face. You came all this way just to say that? The sheriff shrugged. Wanted you to know. If you ever need anything, talk to Martha. Quietly. In your own time. He paused. We're all tired of ghosts. Time we started living again. Then he turned his horse and rode off, never looking back. John watched until he disappeared around the bend. Then he stood, walked back into the house. Allison looked up, waiting. All good, he said simply. She nodded. The world wasn't better. But it was quieter now. Allison quietly packed a few things into a bag. A couple of cloth diapers, a warm sweater, some food wrapped in a towel. John stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame. He didn't say a word, just watched. Colton lay in the cradle, gnawing the edge of a blanket with a serious look on his face. Everything was still, almost too still. I was thinking about leaving, she said, not turning around. Why? Because it's what I know. Run first, then wait for things to go bad again. She tied the bundle tight and looked over at the baby. But maybe he deserves better. Maybe we both do. John gave a small nod. Didn't say a thing. She walked over to him, the bag still in her hand, but her grip was loose. I'm not asking for anything. No promises. No words. I just want to stay. Not as a guest. He met her eyes. This is home. Here, you don't need permission to stay. You just do. She set the bag down on the bench, walked over to the cradle and lifted Colton into her arms. He reached up toward her face, yawned, and drifted right back to sleep. Outside, the wind rustled the leaves. Inside, the warmth held steady. And for the first time in a long time, No one felt alone. The sun was setting slow. Its last rays stretched through the tops of the trees, casting gold across the grass. The air was cool, fresh, like the world had just come out of a long, hard steam. John sat on the porch with a tin cup in his hand. Allison was wrapped in an old blanket beside him. Colton slept inside, near the stove. When I was with him, she started, eyes fixed ahead. I didn't dream of a home or peace. I just wanted to not be afraid every single day. John nodded silently. You know what's strange? She continued, voice low. Life here is simple. Firewood, food, quiet, and still. I keep waiting for something bad to follow it. Maybe it already did, John said. And maybe we made it through. She turned to look at him. He didn't smile, but there was no weight in his voice. Just truth. You really think we could be? I don't know. Something like a family. He paused. I think if 3 people live in one house and would fight to protect each other, that's close enough. The rest comes later. She nodded, pulling the blanket a little tighter. He's still asleep? Like a rock, John said. Probably the first real sleep he's had in a long time. They went quiet again. The wind passed over the field. A board creaked inside, not from fear, just from age. Not every storm destroys things, Allison said softly. What? Some just wash away what needed to be gone. John looked out toward the horizon. Branches swayed gently under the orange sky. And for the first time in years, he thought, maybe this land really could be a beginning. That evening, they didn't rush to light the lamp. The dark came slow, like a guest they weren't afraid to welcome anymore. And it didn't seem so scary now. If this story left a mark on your heart, give it a like and hit that subscribe button. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, take care of your own. And don't turn away from the ones knocking on your door, even when they don't have the words.